Artificial Sun, Chapter 2. Althea narrowly dodged two students who were laughing and chasing each other, no doubt on their way to the nightly bonfire. Every evening, the different classes of students would meet around a bonfire to discuss what they had learned. Althea hated this part of the day. She didn't particularly enjoy discussing her failures with people who were training to be the strongest, fastest, and stealthiest warriors there were. She sighed, her hand on the door to the entrance to her dorm. She contemplated going to the nightly bonfire. A slight gust of wind rushed past her, before backtracking, until Bayard was right in front of her. She didn't face him, but knew that he was looking at her from behind calculating icy eyes.
Are you coming to the bonfire?
His voice was soft. Althea shifted her gaze to him, drinking in his appearance, his dark hair and sharp, stubbled jaw. The moonlight illuminated his handsome, yet rugged face, which was rough from years of training.
I'm still deciding.
She faked a smile while pulling her hand to her side, directing her full attention at the time decelerator in front of her.
Why did you lie for me earlier? You said I saved you. You know I didn't.
He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing due to it. He ran a hand through his dark hair and laughed nervously, avoiding her gaze.
I don't know, Althea. I thought you might appreciate it.
You've noticed then, too?
She hated that other people were seeing that she was not doing well during training lately.
That I can't use my powers properly, and that training is getting more difficult?
I've noticed, yeah.
He sighed slightly before faking a smile.
I just thought you should know that there's somebody looking out for you too. Someone other than Grunner.
Althea's gaze shifted between Bayard's eyes as she was trying to see if he was lying. When she concluded he wasn't, she broke out into a soft smile.
Thank you.
She nodded a bit, just as Flynn exited the dorm, nearly knocking Bayard aside.
Hey, watch it!
Althea snapped slightly, causing Flynn to stop and face her. His expression shifted from neutral to an amused smile.
Hey, wild card. You coming to the bonfire?
He stuffed his hands into his blazer pockets, with his thumbs sticking out of them.
I was just trying to convince her.
Bayard forced a smile onto his lips, and Flynn leaned back to acknowledge his fellow fledgling.
Doesn't look like you're doing too good of a job, Limos.
Flynn used Bayard's last name as if to tease him. Flynn was always light-hearted and never took anything seriously. He was friendly and extroverted, with a head of golden curls, violet eyes, and a handsome smile. Althea noticed that his nose was slightly crooked, as if it had been broken in his youth.
How would you know that?
Bayard asked with a frown, and Flynn turned his attention back to Althea. His lips curled up in a smirk as he examined her. She suddenly felt naked and exposed, but instead of showing Flynn this, she threateningly narrowed her eyes.
Look at her.
Flynn was speaking to Bayard, but his eyes never left Althea's.
Aside from the fact that I can read her mind, it's obvious she doesn't want to go.
Would you stop that?
Althea snapped, swatting the air around her head as if it would disallow Flynn access to her brain. Flynn held his hands out beside him, his smirk never fading from his lips.
I can control my powers. It seems we have that in common.
Althea gave him a once-over before scoffing and turning her heel.
I'm going to the bonfire just to spite you.
The boys followed after her, but with another gust of wind, Bayard was gone. Flynn chuckled with his hands still in his pockets as he started walking beside Althea.
He's fast.
He pointed out the obvious, kicking loose rocks from the ground as he walked. He was taller than Althea, though shorter and more lean than Bayard. and Althea noticed how the sunlight seemed to favor him as opposed to the current moonlight, which favored Bayard.
He's a time decelerator after all.
She looked up to him and cocked a brow upward. He let out a breath of a laugh and kept his eyes ahead.
He thinks you're pretty.
Althea scoffed in response to that. She always knew Bayard was kinder to her than he was to the rest, but he didn't think she was pretty. What was so pretty about a soldier in training who couldn't even take care of herself?
What? He does.
Flynn said with a smirk on his lips. But Althea simply rolled her eyes and turned her gaze away from him. They were walking along the edge of a forest, hiking up a trail to get to the bonfire. Althea caught a glimpse of something glimmering within the trees. She paused her stride, and Flynn noticed, turning back to look at her with intrigue. Her gaze remained on the glimmer, but the longer she looked, the more she realized that it was a pair of amber eyes.
Get down!
Her eyes widened and she dove for Flynn, pushing him down onto the earth. He groaned underneath her weight, and she realized that she must have hurt him.
Ow. What the heck, wildcard?
He gritted his teeth in pain. Althea peeled herself off him, but kept her eyes on the spot where she saw the amber eyes. But it was now gone. She could feel it. Another groan from Flynn caused her to avert her attention to him now.
I'm sorry. I thought I saw something.
Her voice was soft as she crouched down. She wasn't even sure if Flynn heard her.
Are you hurt?
She found his eyes as he sat up.
I'm fine,
He said, but Althea could tell he was lying.
Hold still.
She gripped his arm to hold him in place and extended her arm towards him.
I said I'm...
He spoke, but then went silent and let out a relieved sigh as his injuries were healed.
Thanks.
He said, and they stood up together.
What did you see?
Probably just the trees playing tricks again.
She lied with a fake laugh. The trees in Edagene were alive. They were nymphs who had taken root thousands of years ago.
Yeah, they do that a lot.
Flynn dusted his blazer off as they began walking again. There was a short silence before he spoke.
Also, I can tell when you're lying.
He added, just as they arrived at the bonfire. Without another word, Flynn took his seat beside one of the other fledglings, cutting the conversation short. Althea, still shocked and mildly embarrassed, took a seat next to a girl named Azura, a fire generator. Each class had their own scheduled spot to host their bonfires. Theirs was near the edge of the forest, away from the academy.
Nice of you to join us.
Grunner said before passing along a bag of marshmallows.
Grab a marshmallow, grab a skewer, and tell us what you've learned today.
Althea refrained from glaring at her mentor as she grabbed her marshmallow and stabbed it into the skewer that was lying by her feet. She passed the bag along the line, but didn't respond to Grunner's request. An awkward silence filled the air before Ameera, a master of the elements, spoke.
I learned that dragons can't swim very well,
Said Ameera. Murmurs from the other fledglings filled what was once the silence, though Grunner's eyes pierced into Althea's before they shifted to Ameera.
Very interesting fact.
He raised his voice so that everyone could hear him.
The dragon's ability to swim depends on the dragon's class. Earth-class dragons can't swim at all, while water dragons...
He allowed the sentence to hang in the air.
What we face today, sir?
Pellinore, a winged fledgling, asked.
Today, you faced Earth-class dragons. They're well known for their tiny black eyes and fixed skin, which can range from colors like brown, black, and gray.
What about green?
Althea interrupted Grunner, and roars of laughter filled the campfire, which Grunner quickly doused.
Green dragons are mystery-class dragons. They haven't been spotted for centuries.
He educated her.
An animal's color is essential to its essence. If the dragon is green, It spells danger. They're the largest, most aggressive beasts. They've all been hunted and killed to extinction.
Althea quieted herself. She was sure that the dragon she saw fly overhead earlier was green and gold. Her eyes found Bayard, but he was already looking at her. He saw it too. He was with her. How could nobody else have seen it?
What else have we learned today?
Grunner diverted the attention. Althea knew Flynn was watching her intently. He knew exactly what was going on inside her head.
I learned that Pellinore can't outfly a dragon, no matter how big and stupid his wings are.
Ambrose, a fledgling with immense strength, grumpily added. Pellinore was meant to be his best friend, but more often than not, would abandon him during training. Pellinore was cowardly and weak, was only alive because Ambrose was looking out for him. Ambrose took more blows on behalf of Pellinore than he'd ever taken on his own. Pellinore didn't say anything, but shrunk slightly, avoiding Ambrose's glare.
I learned to never let your guard down,
said a teleporter named Neolani. And so everyone went around discussing what they'd learned during training, though Althea didn't say a thing. Grunner cleared his throat, and there was silence.
Althea.
He called her, and she raised her head, twirling the skewer with her unburnt, uneaten marshmallow in her fingers.
What have you learned today?
All eyes were on her, and she refrained from sighing. Her eyes flicked to Grunner's blackening marshmallow before she eyed him.
Your marshmallow is burning?
Her voice was low, and soft laughter came from the group. Without shifting his gaze, Grunner pulled back his skewer from the flames.
I'm serious,
he said, and the laughter died down. Althea narrowed her eyes slightly, as if challenging Grunner, but she knew she would never win. So she sighed.
Today I learned.
But before she could finish her sentence, a loud roar was heard in the direction of the forest. There was a silence in which everyone looked at one another with shock, save for Grunner, who was keeping his eyes on the entrance of the forest.
Everyone stay calm,
he said in a lowly voice, trying to focus his power to sense if there was anything there. Suddenly his eyes widened, but before anyone could react, a large Titan bear bursted out of the forest. Titan bears were gigantic, roughly the size of 2 full-grown males if they were standing on top of one another. They hadn't been spotted in over 7 years and were creatures so strong that the fledglings had a few more years of training before they could ever face one in battle. The bear launched itself at Grunner, who barely managed to duck underneath it. The fledgling scattered as Grunner rolled onto the ground, skidding to a halt on his knees. With liquid speed, he whipped twin daggers out of the sides of his belt.
Grunner, what are you doing? Just control it!
One of the fledglings shouted, but Grunner ignored him. The bear launched itself at Grunner once again, swinging its paws lazily through the air. Grunner dodged and anticipated blows before digging one of his daggers into the bear's side. It screamed out into the sky as Grunner roughly pulled his dagger out, ripping some more of its flesh. He then mounted the bear and dug his daggers into its back. With a pained roar, the bear threw its body around, knocking Grunner down. He landed with his head on a rock, and his eyes rolled back as he passed out. To everyone's horror, the wounds on the bear closed as if it were never harmed. The bear neared Grunner, breaking out into a run, but before it could get a blow on him, a rock landed on the side of its head. The bear faced the 8 fledglings in confusion, as if it was seeing them for the first time. Ameera had used her earth element abilities to knock the bear with the rock, and it seemed to know this. Breathing heavily due to nerves, Althea began barking orders.
Bayard, go get Grunner to safety!
She looked at him, and she nodded before he was gone with a flash, taking Grunner with him.
Everyone else!
I'm gonna kill this thing.
Azura conjured a flame in the palm of her hand, cutting Althea off. Azura was always cocky, and that was her weakness.
Wait, don't!
Althea knocked Azura's hand, causing the flame to die down. She faced the bear who had started standing on its hind legs.
We're not killing it. Something's wrong. They haven't come out in years.
I don't care what the reason is. Don't stand in my way, or you're next.
Azura warned before shoving Althea out of her way and launching herself at the bear with a scream, fire ready. The bear easily towered over her, trying to swat at her while avoiding her fireballs. Althea nearly let out a sigh of desperation as she launched herself into the battle along with the other fledglings. Pellinore flew at the bear, using a skewer to stab at it, but he was taken out of the battle quicker than he could join. The bear easily knocked him against a tree, causing one of his wings to snap as he slid onto the floor in pain. Azura had managed to get a few fireballs onto the bear, but its surprise healing powers quickly closed the wounds. Althea noticed how each blow the bear dealt was stronger than it should be, as if it had super strength. There was no way the fledglings were going to beat it without Grunner. The combined attacks of all the fledglings were like nothing to the bear, and he had knocked most of them out within the first few minutes. As if sensing her, the bear's head turned to Althea, eyes glowing orange. They seemed to encompass her, and a feeling of warmth spread in her chest. The Titan bear lowered itself back onto its 4 paws, minimizing itself to about 8 feet tall before slowly walking towards Althea. Its amber eyes never left her, and her heartbeat picked up speed when the bear was in front of her. She could smell its breath, and vividly see each and every piece of fur on its face. What stood out most were the piercing orange orbs, which looked strangely similar to the ones she'd seen on her way to the bonfire. Without thinking, she raised her hand as if to touch the bear, and it seemed to calm, even leaning towards her hand to be touched. The bear let out a sudden roar as an arrow pierced its neck. Althea watched in confusion as the bear's eyes shifted from orange to black and cold. The bear looked confused for a few seconds, as if it didn't know where it was, before his eyes locked onto Althea and it raised a paw. Before it could deliver a blow to her, she was pushed out of the way. The fall was hard as she skidded into the dirt, and she watched in horror how Ambrose had pushed her away, but didn't manage to avoid the blow himself.
Ambrose!
She found herself screaming, trying her hardest to stand up, when suddenly there was a ringing in her ears, and her vision flashed to white. She groaned and clutched her head.
"Come and find me,"
a feminine, velvety voice said, and it filled Althea with an inexplicable calmness, when suddenly she was back at the bonfire. She gripped her gold-plated dagger, willing herself to stand up and fight the bear, even though she was sure to lose, when the bear's eyes flashed back to a bright amber. It looked at Althea for a long while, and with a grunt, stalked back into the woods, leaving nothing but chaos in its wake. Althea looked at the bodies of her classmates, and her legs nearly gave in. The bear had taken out everyone. With a flash, Bayard was back at the scene.
Grunner stabilized. He
paused as he took in the sight before him. His eyes flicked to Althea's, his own filled with worry.
What happened?
Althea ignored him, but swallowed hard as she made her way to the first victim. Neolani groaned as she clutched her bleeding side. Her dull eyes looked up at Althea, and she forced a smile.
You're okay.
She stated the obvious, but Althea crouched down next to her and gently pushed some air out of her face.
I am, and you're going to be okay too.
Althea placed her hand over Neolani's, and a warmth spread over her fingertips. Althea felt a significant amount of energy leave her. She nearly passed out, but within a few seconds, Neolani's injury was healed.
Thank you.
Neolani tackled Althea into a hug, revived as if she'd never been attacked, though she was still weak and needed rest.
No problem. You should go before the bear returns,
Althea said, trying to hide the tiredness from her voice. This is why she struggled with her powers. They took a lot out of her, more than they should for a fledgling her age. Neolani was about to protest, saying something along the lines of how she couldn't leave everyone.
Bayard, take Neolani back,
Althea instructed, turning her face halfway towards him, though she avoided his eyes.
You can't heal everyone.
Bayard protested with worry in his voice.
You're not strong enough.
I can't just leave them here. They'll die.
There was a crack in Althea's voice when she spoke.
You can if it means you'll be safe.
Neolani said. Althea ignored her and stood up, looking at the fallen fledglings who were groaning and hardly moving on the ground. They were barely holding on to consciousness.
Bayard.
Althea nodded her head towards Neolani.
Althea.
Now.
She looked him in the eye. He clenched his jaw in response.
And when you've taken her back, come back for the others. They're not going to be strong enough to go back on their own.
Bayard sighed but said nothing in protest. He knew he wasn't going to change Althea's mind. She was stubborn, more stubborn than anyone he'd ever known. Perhaps that's why he was in love with her. Within a second, both Bayard and Neolani were gone. Althea flinched as she leaned down next to Azura, who had managed to scathe herself in the process. Half of her face was burnt. There was a claw mark on her leg, oozing blood. Althea knew this was going to take a lot out of her. It wasn't something as simple as a sprained leg. She held her hand over Azura's wounds and repeated the process. With every fledgling she healed, and every fledgling Bayard took back, she felt her energy escaping her. She could barely walk by the time she reached Pellinore. He was groaning and writhing in absolute pain. His wing was bent out of proportion, and his leg was facing the other way. When Althea crouched down next to him, she noticed the bow and arrow, his signature weapon that was used to shoot the bear, laying by his side.
Good aim,
she told him with a slight smile as she healed his leg. He let out a relieved sigh as his leg reformed itself. She then placed her hand over his wing, but as she was attempting to heal him, a dizziness washed over her.
Althea, are you okay?
Pellinore asked, gripping her shoulder.
I'm fine,
she barely managed to say as she grazed her fingertips over his wing. A familiar warmth spread over her fingertips, but it was quickly replaced with an ice-cold feeling. Pellinore's wings blackened as a stabbing pain formed in her stomach. She groaned as she dropped to the ground, clutching her stomach before she let out a scream. The pain was unbearable, and she writhed on the ground. This had never happened to her before. Pellinore was calling her name, but his voice seemed far away and distant. His voice was soon replaced with Bayard's.
Pellinore, your wings!
He had shouted before there was a sickening, snapping sound. There was the sound of an arrow being knocked before Althea felt herself being whisked up into a pair of arms. She barely held on to consciousness, the sight of Bayard's worried face fading in and out of her vision.
Bay.
She tried to speak, but was too weak to finish the sentence. She felt herself being placed into something metal.
It's okay. You're going to be okay. They'll take care of you,
Bayard said, but his voice was far away before Althea's vision went completely black.